My name is Jaclyn Baker. I'm an IFBB fitness Olympian. Just placed second at this past Olympia. And I live in New York City, work as a fitness nutrition specialist, other than bodybuilding. I grew up in Florida. I have two sisters. I'm a middle child. My parents are still in Florida. I have one sister here in New Jersey and one in California. Went to the University of Arizona and have a BFA in dance. And that's how I ended up in New York City. I moved here to dance professionally and then did that for about 10 years and transitioned into bodybuilding in 2015.
What are some of the differences? What are some of the similarities that you've seen in the different places that you've been?
Well, I have to be honest, I didn't get into bodybuilding until I already lived in New York, and I've been in New York now since 2006. So most of my adult life has been in New York. When I was living in Arizona, I was geared more towards dancing and did, some cardio and some light lifting. So I would say just overall fitness has really expanded, especially for women over the past, maybe even just 5 or 6 years. You see more women in the weight room and lifting weights as opposed to just doing cardio. So I would say that's the biggest thing that I've seen change over the years. And state to state, I can't really speak on that because I've been in New York for so long.
So, getting into bodybuilding, how did you actually get into the sport and like how did you get introduced to it?
So I was actually dancing with a contemporary company here in New York City at the time, and I had a hip injury, and my physical therapist had me swimming. And in the city, in New York City, there's only a couple gyms that have pools. So I happened to be at this one gym using the pool. And my now coach, Chino Burgos, his Instagram is at Detail Bodybuilding. He approached me. He was looking for someone to train and coach to get back into the bodybuilding industry. And he liked the way I trained and liked my physique. And so he asked me if I'd ever thought of competing. So I kind of took that back, did a little research on my own on him, and asked all my friends that were trainers in the area what they thought. And they were like, if you're going to do it, you should do it with him. So I trained with him for 6 months and competed in my first amateur competition, which was Bev Francis Metropolitan Classic in 2015 in figure. And I won both my categories. And I kind of just like fell into bodybuilding. I trained really hard for those 6 months. And then I got off stage and I thought, well, I'm good at this. And I should say at the time, I was done with my dance career. I was going to retire and I kind of just wanted what I called like a real person job with like, sit behind a desk, have, health insurance, vacation days, all, off on the weekends. And I kind of was in a transition period when I met him. And so I thought, oh, I'll do this and just see what happens. And I ended up winning and thought, oh, well, I'm good at this. And then it was another way for me to be on stage without injuring myself more with my hip injury. And then my coach found out that I had such an extensive dance and acrobatic background. And he was like, why don't we try fitness? And so that's how that led into where I am today. I did fitness in 2017 and figure, and I turned pro in fitness at Bev's Universe. And then I went and competed pro the next year.
So, whenever he first actually approached you and you said you went back and like you asked people about him and
Yeah.
kind of figured some stuff out, but when he was it like did you truly have that interest or was it kind of like when some people are like, hey, do you want to do this, you'd be like, oh, I'll think about it, but you never really necessarily intend to do it? Or like to you, what was, because somebody just coming up to you and saying like, hey, do you want to do this, it's almost like it's like a twist of fate. It's like a big decision on like, how is my life going to go, but you may not know it at the time. So how did you actually, like, in your brain, were you thinking like, oh, this person's kind of crazy, like what was your initial thought?
My initial thought was that he was genuine and, saw something in me that he thought I would be good at bodybuilding. I had been told in the past by a couple of other trainer friends that I should get into it. My mom actually competed in one show on a whim when I was in college, and she was 48, I think. And her trainer said the same thing, like, let's just do it. You're like, I think you would do really well. So I kind of was familiar with the world of bodybuilding. And when he approached me, I didn't think anything of it much further than that competition. I didn't really overthink it. I thought, okay, well, I'm in kind of a transition period. I don't know what the heck I'm doing with my life or what I want to be when I grow up. So let's just do it. What's 5 months of working out? It's not like that crazy.
Right.
So I don't think I thought much further than the 6 months and the competition, and that was it.
So when you actually did the competition though, what were your thoughts afterwards? Was it like, oh, this is actually like pretty cool? Or was it like, okay, that was a good experience? Like, what was your initial thought right
I
after?
think I was hooked right away. I've always been on stage since I was 2 years old. I've been dancing and on stage, and being on stage in a different light it just brought something else out in me, a different sort of passion for the stage. Um, and immediately I thought I could like just feel it in my bones. Like, this is something I can do. I was hooked.
Because you have that background of being on stage, what did you feel as far as like the comparison aspect? Was it very similar, because it's at the same time as it's kind of like a performance in a way, you're showing your body, you're showing the judges like, hey, this is what basically this is what I've been doing, kind of thing. Like, look at what I've been doing. But how was it similar to dance? And then how was it also very different, I guess, from performing in more of like a true like physical way, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think, well, for my first competition, since I just did figure, I think it was very different from dance because you were just judged on your body. There was no talent there, besides my posing and maybe my walk. But it was strictly just who looked the best. So I think that aspect was different. I think the feeling that I get when I get on stage is almost like an alter ego, like something else just comes out of me. And the adrenaline rush that you get from being on stage was very similar to dance. You're not necessarily just standing there for minutes at a time. You're moving. So I think those are like two differences and similarities.
Was there any like awkwardness because of that? Like, whenever you're dancing and you're on stage, it's like you always have like this thing to like be doing next, you're like very active. People are like watching you, but they're also like watching for what you're about to do. Whereas when you're just standing there and you're like, even though you are posing and you're kind of moving in a very limited way, like you're very stagnant in your movement. Was there any awkwardness there because of that?
No, because for me, I have always been told, if the audience can see, or the judges or audience can see you, I'm sorry, if you can see the audience or judges and they can see you. So to me, the moment that I can see a judge or the audience, I'm on stage. So it was very similar to a dance performance where it wasn't like, there isn't a moment to relax when you're on stage. There isn't a moment to fix something or, adjust something or wave hello or look down. It's like the second I see the judges or the audience, they can see me and I'm already performing. So from the moment I step up those stairs, it's a performance to me.
And so when you got into, or you were thinking about getting into the fitness aspect of it, um, was there any hesitancy there though? Because it's like, oh, I thought this part was over, kind of thing.
Yes. Yes. There were two reasons. One, I was so injured. I believe I was just turned 30. So I was like, in dance world, that's old. I was like not into it. I was injured. I didn't want to go in that route. And also, I hadn't done a lot of the acrobatic skills that I did as a kid in my mid 20s and early 30s, or actually like late 20s. So I had to go back and kind of like, it wasn't so much relearn them, it was just start to do them again, which is scarier in your 30s than it is at 12,
Yeah.
84. And on another note, I didn't realize what a fitness routine needed and or didn't need. So when you're watching some of these women that compete, you think you have to do, a back tuck, which is a flip with no hands, or you have to do these flying push-ups, and those aren't even required. And I didn't know that. And then I didn't know that I could make it my own. I thought that it had to be what I had seen in the past, which was very cheerleader gymnastics like. And it wasn't my favorite thing to do physically. So I didn't think I wanted to then venture into something in my 30s that like wasn't really something that sat well with me and my body. And then my coach explained to me, he was like, no, you can make it anything you want. It just has to have these four required skills. And once I realized that, I thought, oh, well, I can do that. So I was hesitant for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine because like you get into it's like okay, this part like I've been dancing and then I'm like okay, now I'm going into bodybuilding and you're kind of getting used to that and it's like okay, I'm in this new routine and this is how I'm kind of like going about my life in a certain way. It's a little bit different. And then
Right.
this thing gets reintroduced where it's like it could almost feel like to me it's like am I not necessarily did I like I'm not saying like it's a waste, but like did I almost like get into this new thing and now I'm almost like going backwards a little bit.
Yeah, it was strange. And it was as I was working on my physique, I was like, well, maybe I should go audition some more for dance, or maybe I should go back and do, some fitness modeling now that I have worked on my physique so much. When I was in dancing, I was trying to do more fitness modeling, but that wasn't really my physique then wasn't really what they were looking for. So I think some part of me did feel that way, but also I could see where it was going. And so I was looking more towards the future than kind of like back on the past.
So whenever you're actually getting into bodybuilding and you're learning all these things about the sport and kind of like the intricacies of it, and especially because with each, which we're looking at fitness, it's kind of like you do it a little bit different than if it's wellness or a little bit different than if it's bikini or whatever. How did you go about with the adjustment going from figure to fitness? Was that more do you feel like it was more challenging because there's this new added aspect of the choreography? You have to learn it, you have to practice it. Like, how did you take on that transition?
It didn't affect me much. I train and still do like a figure competitor, and just added in some fitness stuff. For me, with my background in dance, the choreography and learning a routine and putting together a routine comes very, very quickly. Where I know some of the other competitors, it takes them a lot longer to memorize the routine or learn it or transition through it or make it look smooth. So for me, my dance background really helped with that. I had to work on some fitness skills as far as like handstands and push-ups, but we just added that little bits in my training and that helped me. So it wasn't such a huge transition.
And because you were training in this certain way, did you feel like at the beginning you almost had to like, or that you maybe were less athletic, just like maybe not as like flexible or maybe not as whatever because those weren't the things that you were going for, and it
I
because
think luckily I didn't lose any of my athleticism or flexibility too much. I mean, as you age, you lose a lot of flexibility no matter what. But I don't think I had too many issues there. I think more of it was just injury. I'm very injury prone. Um, so I think it was just working around injuries more than anything.
so for people out there who are injury prone, but they're also interested in doing this, like what would be some recommendations for you? What are some things that you do to try to stay healthy, try to limit the injuries, try to help your body recover?
I would say listening to your body, number one, not pushing it past where it needs to be, or past, like if you're injured, listening to that injury and saying, okay, I need to hold back today. I would say having a coach that understands fitness and that knows that maybe your leg workout needs to be a little bit varied because you have, for me, for instance, a hip injury. So is it as important for us to back squat, or can we leg press instead and still get the same effect, so that way tomorrow I can do my fitness routine without my hip hurting, for example. Advil, ice, heat, massage, having a good physical therapist on hand, a good sports med doc that understands athletes and not just a baseball or a football athlete, but a dancer or a gymnast, or the way that our bodies move and what we need to do is very important.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.
How much of your dance and of like your, because I feel like with dance and with fitness too, you have this like control over your body, you have this like way that you can move in like a performing way. How much does that translate into your posing as well?
I would say it translates pretty heavily. I remember my coach from the first day we started posing, he's like, "Can you walk in heels?" And I thought, are there women that can't walk in heels? Like, and I danced in heels. Yeah. So I tumbled in heels. So that transition was pretty smooth. I would say my posing is, as far as my stage presence and my posing in that regard, hasn't been something I had to like really focus on working on. Now posing as far as learning how to spread my lats or hold my shoulders correctly and engage my legs or my hamstrings, or that's different. But as far as being on stage and walking and posing and having stage presence, that kind of came naturally, I guess we could say, because of all the years of being on stage.
It's interesting. I've never thought about like the previous experience of a person and how that also kind of tangles in and ties into their bodybuilding experience as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Whenever you actually turn pro in fitness, did you like have this vision of, this is where I'm going to end up, this is where I'm going to be, this is like, obviously it's kind of like everybody's goal to get to the Olympia and to like, it'd be really cool if we got there kind of thing. But like, did you truly see yourself when you first turned pro as like, this is like, I'm heading in this direction?
I think because of the way I got into bodybuilding, it was kind of, I don't want to say by accident, but I didn't know much about the IFBB or Olympia. So each step of my career, each competition, each like winning an amateur show, winning a national show, that's how I was learning. So when I turned pro, I didn't really even know how you got to Olympia. I didn't know that I could get in if I made enough points or win a show. So I never thought much further than what I was doing at that moment. So I guess to answer your question, I never thought I couldn't get to Olympia or win Olympia, but I never also had that in my head. It was like, what am I doing right now? And then I kind of compartmentalized that and then moved to the next thing. I never doubted myself, and my coach never doubted me. And if you ask him, he'll say from the beginning, he knew I could be where I am today. But I guess, yeah, I was more compartmentalized in what I was doing and didn't look too far ahead.
Do you feel like that took a lot of maybe some of the pressure off if you were constantly thinking about it?
It wasn't conscious. It was just, I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I got myself into it. And so each step, each ladder that I climbed was just kind of learning the next thing. And then I learned the next thing. And then, I remember my coach asked me who the head judge was at my first show. And I was like, I don't know. Like, there was a guy there, I didn't know I needed to know. It wasn't that I was like, I didn't care. I just didn't know that was important, or I didn't study all that information because it just kept moving so quickly.
Right. No, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
The more that I talk to competitors, the more that it opens my eyes on like how everything is kind of like tied together, how much knowing and understanding the small details. Like, one thing that just like really makes sense now that I never even thought about before is like thinking about what show you're actually going to do based on different factors. And to me, it was like, okay, I was kind of thinking of it as like a traditional sport where it's like, okay, this is on the schedule. We're going to go play this game. Then we're going to go to this one. It's right. Like, it's completely different in bodybuilding.
It's very different, and it's very different with fitness, especially in the IFBB, because there aren't many shows. So I think in comparison, I don't know the numbers off the bat, but in comparison to like bikini, where they have maybe 100 shows, we have 10. So it is more of a strategic and more of, what shows would be best, what shows are closer together. Yeah, it's definitely, there's definitely strategy to it.
Yeah. It's really cool when you kind of start learning about it. I don't know. It's just like bodybuilding is one of the sports, maybe the main sport where like the fine details are like the most important, like whether it's picking the show, whether it's like how many grams of, not the average person is ever going to think about the gram, maybe the ounces, but never the grams of food they're eating, or,
Right.
how many seconds are you, is your muscle under tension in this exercise? Like, is it 3 or is it 4? Is it 2? Like, it's really like the seconds, the grams, the smallest of things, the smallest of measurements that make the difference in bodybuilding.
Definitely.
So when you actually got to your first pro show, because you were kind of in this mindset of like taking it as it comes and not looking too far into the future, did you ever almost like get to a point, and maybe it was your first pro show, because like you're just seeing these pros, to where you became like, oh my gosh, like I'm now at this level? How did that like affect you, knowing like, okay, I was at the top, now I'm at the bottom, and now all these people are way kind of maybe
It's funny, I never even thought that. And I remember I took 4th at Toronto Pro. It was my first show. And I thought I had 2nd when they were announcing it. And I was like, maybe, but I ended up taking 4th, which was great. And most people would have been ecstatic, but I came off stage and I was like, that wasn't good enough. And I remember my dad said to me, he said, well, what did you expect coming in here? Exactly what you said. You're now at a new level. And I said, I expected to win. So I don't think, no, I never had that. Like now I'm at a new level, I'm starting at the bottom. I didn't expect to win just because I should win. I expect to win because I busted my butt and I looked good, and I looked my best I'd ever looked. So I don't think I had that feeling.
So for you, whenever you got this position, this placement that you thought maybe, oh, I thought I was going to do better, and then you also look like the best that you've ever looked, combining those two things is almost like two opposites, meeting at the same time. How did you handle that?
I think I'm a realist, I like to say. So, and I'm a hard worker. So I came off and my coach was like, well, your physique was not what theirs was. And, he's very honest, and he's like, you didn't deserve first for your physique. And so I can look at it subjectively and say, or objectively rather, and say, no, you're right. I need to work on this, this, and this. So I just went back to the drawing board and we worked. I think, again, with like not thinking too far in the future, I didn't think too much on it. It wasn't like I went into some spiral of like depression or anything. It was like, okay, so how can I win the next competition? So we went back to the drawing board, and the next day we continue to work and continue to get better. And just like I've said since day one, continue to climb until I get to the top.
Yeah. Kind of just taking it day by day, really.
Yeah.
I think it's for some people, it's so obvious. Like for you, it sounds like it's like built in, it's ingrained, and you just take it day by day. But
I think so, yeah.
Other people, it's like they can only picture like the big, like the main thing, the big goal. They can't break it down. They can't understand like, oh, if I just do this over and over and over again, I'll get there one day.
And I think that is one of my good qualities, is I'm able to find smaller goals day to day, week to week, year to year, that help me progress, as opposed to everyone goes into a competition to win, right? There's only one winner though. So like if you get defeated every time you don't win, that's going to set you back each time, as opposed to I got 4th at my first pro show against women that have been competing for 10 plus years. So you kind of have to look at that and where you are and let that elevate you, as opposed to kind of push you down.
Right. And it's tricky because I think there's also a balance there that needs to take place of like being appreciative and like, and enjoying like the success that you have, as well as like taking that so-called defeat, so-called, loss, and saying, I need to keep pushing, because you can't have
Yes.
too much of one or the other, or else you either go crazy with like
Yes.
perfectionism, or
I think
you,
if you ask my parents, I've been like that since I was a kid. I was a competitive dancer. I was a high level ballet dancer. So my parents would say if I came home and my teacher didn't correct me in class, meaning I was doing something wrong, that they corrected me, I would be upset. So I think that's kind of just been in me since I was a kid. Um, but I agree with you. For most people, it is a little bit harder, I think.
definitely. And so what were some of those things that you did start, maybe were there new things that you started to implement, when you turn or after that first pro show that was like, hey, we did great, but these are some new things that we can try. These are some either recovery methods we can do, or we can put more emphasis on these certain things.
I definitely started training my strength moves more for fitness, which I had never done before. I call myself I can do dancer gymnastics or dancer acrobatics. But I never did like the beam or the bar or things like that, where you're really focusing on strength. Dancer gymnastics is more like the pretty skills that go into a dance routine that kind of just flow. Whereas I never was able to even hold a handstand for more than 2 seconds. So I started drilling some of that stuff, and doing exercises that would help me with that. And that was one of the things. And then we just continued to work on my physique and improve it day to day.
Yeah, that day to day, just keep going back to
Exactly. Yeah.
that little one
Yeah,
rep
it's
at a
funny. I
time.
always, I always like at the end of every day, it sounds silly, but it's like my little form of meditation. I don't meditate, or I'm not good at yoga or any of these kind of like very calming things. So at the end of every day, I thank my body for getting me through the day. And I basically say to myself, like, I'm proud of you for doing A, B, C, D, E and making it through the day. And then, you go the next day and you do it all over again.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. Save 20% off your first order with the link below, or use code TWR20. Online at mybapparel.com.
And as a bodybuilder, when you have like so many small little tasks throughout the day to do, and even tasks within those tasks, and
Yeah.
things within those things to remember that are important, is it challenging for you at all? You kind of mentioned right there, like how you go through and thank your body, and like that kind of more puts you at ease. But have you ever struggled with like kind of taking the time, or the time to like slow it down, and like not like push all that out of your mind, and like not, because I feel like that's one thing a lot of people struggle with, is like even like with falling asleep, like everybody has a million things going on in their mind, and just being able to turn that off. Like, have you ever struggled with being able to turn that off and just being like, okay, for now we're not going to think about that?
About bodybuilding, you mean?
Yeah.
Um, I think that, and I think this goes back to my dancing, and I was again just having a conversation with someone recently about this. I've never been fully immersed in one thing. Like when I was dancing, all of my friends were non-dancers. Same thing with bodybuilding. A lot of my friends are non-bodybuilders. So I have those outlets where I'm not constantly just talking bodybuilding. So I think that's very helpful. I keep a very, and we'll use this term loosely, normal life, as far as like I go out to events and stuff. I don't sit back because, well, 3 weeks off from the Arnold's, I'm not doing anything. But, like, 16 weeks out, I'm still going to birthday parties and things. So I think that helps me not being just fully immersed in 100% of my brain on bodybuilding all the time. Where I watch, things on TV that have nothing to do with sports or bodybuilding, or I read memoirs of actors and actresses. So it's not just I'm reading only science and fitness and things like that. So I think that helps a little bit. As
And
far as calming your brain, I don't know. If you can find a light switch for my brain, you let me know.
no, I know it's so it's so challenging
Yeah.
to just be able to like, because it's almost a trick. It's almost a deception that we think we can even like control our brains in some way. And if we can get there, like mastering that, I think is, whoever in the human population has ever done that, I don't know, but like it'd be amazing to like be able to just turn it on, turn it off, like utilizing it when we need it, and then being like, okay, for now, let's not have any like weird thoughts or any distraction thoughts or anything like that. I just, certainly I think it's possible to train your brain, but to get to that point, I don't know, it'd definitely be one heck of a feat.
Definitely.
When you mentioned though that like you have this balance, you have this thing where it's like I can still I'm not fully immersed. I have other things going on with my life. I think so many people within bodybuilding especially would be blown away by that, because I've talked to so many people who not even IFBB pros yet, and to them it's like I have to be fully immersed. I have to, give up everything. I have to, make this my life, or else I'm not going to get there. Do you think that that's true for some people? Do you think it's person by person, or what do you think like that balance is for?
I do think it's person by person. I think that it's unfortunate that the bodybuilding industry, people feel that way. And I think it's been kind of ingrained in people's heads that you have to be that way. There's certain like quotes or things that people say, like no days off, or, live, bodybuilding is life, or whatever it is that people, to me, again, it's been my whole life that I've been like that. So I think it was just natural for me. I do think it's unfortunate that people feel that way, because I think if you pour your entire life into something and it doesn't work out, most people would kind of fall into some sort of like depression or, hole of some sort. But I do think it's person to person and it's personality. And what I've been told is people feel like they can't do it. They can't accomplish all they need to accomplish unless they're fully immersed. I can still keep to my meals and my food and my schedule. I can go out with my friends and say, no, I need to be in bed by 10 and leave. Whereas some people can't do that. Or I can go out to a party and not eat or drink, or some people are going to feel like they don't have the control.
Right.
Or they can't have fun. So I don't feel that way.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do agree with you that the majority of people are not like, majority of people in bodybuilding are not like that.
Yeah. So whenever you make it to that Olympia level, was there any for you, was that the point where, because it feels like to me, like what we're talking about, you're very kind of like heads down, just doing the work, kind of like focusing on the moment. To you, was that a point to where you finally like looked up and were like, oh my gosh, like look where I am?
Yeah, I think that is one thing that because I'm constantly looking to be better and get better, that's something that I've had to work on, is really enjoying the moment that I'm in and recognizing what I've done and how far I've come. So yeah, I remember in the first athletes meeting for Olympia signing, they had like these posters that all the athletes sign. And I remember like seeing all the athletes on the poster and myself signing it. And I just kind of thought, oh, this is the best, I'm signing like with the best in the world. Like there was a very surreal moment for me. And so now every Olympia that I've done, that moment, I kind of am there and I'm like, still like, oh, recognize what you've done, where you've come from, and how hard you work to get there, but also appreciate the moments and that moment specifically.
Yeah. I think that's so hard for people, myself, I'm even still trying to figure out even though I know some things to be true and I can see like other people like living that way or that they understand it, until I truly like can rationalize how to do it within my mind, it's so hard.
Well, I think it's more of recognizing what you've done to get there and then kind of giving yourself a pat on the back, but knowing you can go further, as opposed to working hard, getting to a place and saying, okay, well, that was good. That's enough. It's more of the how can you be better, but appreciating how far you've come.
No, that's definitely a good way to look at it. It's appreciating, all the hard work,
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about though this most recent Olympia experience, and what were your thoughts leading into it? Were you kind of like, were you in this mindset of like, hey, this is going to be something special, or like, was it just kind of another incidence of like just living in the moment and letting the next moment come?
I think a little bit of both. I think at this point in my career, I had placed top 5 3 years in a row. And so, like I said, I just kept climbing. And I felt like coming off of 3rd at Arnold's, I wanted and needed and deserved to be up up in the top 3. So I think going into it, I was super, super confident on my physique. I was very confident with my routine at 5 weeks out. We changed my routine about 5 or 6 weeks out. We scratched it and redid a whole new one because I wasn't confident in it. So I think going into this year's Olympia, I believe that I could be at the top. But again, going back to the smaller goals, my only goal for this Olympia, obviously we all go in to win, but my only goal was to be the last 2 women standing in the physique round and compared with whoever it was. I didn't care who the other competitor was. I just wanted to be the last 2 standing there when they brought the last call outs. And I was. So after prejudging, I was like, okay, goals have been met. And that was my goal for this Olympia. So I don't think I ever fully feel or understand that I could have placed 2nd or 1 or whatever it was until the moment it's happening. And when I was backstage after my routine, I did a great job in my routine. Like, we're going out for awards, and I kind of like took a moment. I thought, oh, I could be top 1 or 2. So I think it kind of rolls in and hits me slowly because I am so head down working.
Yeah. And because you have this like, kind of like you just mentioned, that realization of like, oh, I could be in this position where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that took a lot of pressure off of yourself, or do you feel like it kind of made you more nervous, more anxious?
Well, I didn't realize it till after I was done with my routine. Like, it's weird. I compartmentalize our sections because we do have the physique round and then the routine round. So if I wake up that morning, the only thing I'm thinking about is kind of like a figure competitor that I have to pose and put my suit on, and that's it. And when I was done with that, I was like, I could leave and go home. I'm happy. I was the top 2. That's what I wanted. So then when I got to the fitness routine round that night, I kind of just like always tell my coach and my choreographer, I'm always like, all right, I'm just going to go do my thing. And that's it. Like, I think deep down there's some pressure that I put on myself, but I kind of just try to enjoy that moment on stage, and whatever comes out on stage comes out, and do the best that I can. So it wasn't until after, and I was watching all the routines go through, and then they were bringing us back up for awards, that I had that moment of, oh, wait, I could actually, like, I could have won. I could be 2nd. I could be 5th. So it was, I think, not until then. So I didn't have so much pressure, no.
And then when you are standing there, what's kind of going through your mind right before you realize like, oh, this is the placement that I'm going to get?
It's funny because I think as you're climbing the ladders for the, those top spots, you're saying, I hope they call my name, right? You're like, I hope I'm in 5th place or 4th place or whatever it is. So as you're standing there and you want to be higher, you're kind of like, I want them to call my name because I want to be in top 5, but also I want them to wait a couple spots so that I'm higher than I was last year, or, so I think that's what's going through my head more so. And the other thing that goes through my head and went through my head this year was I scan the audience. and I'm watching people like Flex Lewis, Linda Murray, Jay Cutler, all these people looking back at me, and you can see people in the audience like trying to figure out who is next, or like we come back out in our suits, so we're no longer in our costumes for Olympia, so it's kind of hard for them to place who's who. So you can see people pointing and trying to figure it out, and so that's really cool.
Yeah. What is it like though to be like, because for those people, they've been the ones that people are looking at, for years. People are looking at them and thinking in the competitive sense, like where are they going to land? And then the same people are looking at you, even maybe some of the people that you've looked at before. What is that like? What kind of like realization or what kind of thoughts are going through your head? Because the people that you were kind of like coming after are now, and then you also have to think like the people that are coming next, they're also looking at you, and you're kind of going to be the person one day for them.
I just hope that for the people coming up that I can inspire and represent myself in a way that is true to who I am as a person and an athlete, and that inspires them. As far as the people that have been, winners and champions of the past, it's more of a surreal moment for me. It's kind of, I don't know how to really put that into words. But yeah, I guess just very surreal for them to be looking at me. But for the people coming up, I just hope that people look at me and say, like, she did it her own way. She didn't conform to what everyone else was doing. She enjoyed the stage. She was good sportsmanship, all those things that I think I really pride myself in. That's what I would want younger competitors to see in me.
Right. And for the older ones, does it ever feel like there's almost any not necessarily pressure, but does it feel like there's almost any pressure to like live up to maybe what they've done, and like and not necessarily like the way they did it, but they brought the sport here. Now I'm trying to bring the sport up to another level. Like, does it ever feel like?
I don't think I've ever felt that way, in all honesty. I think like I said, I just wanted to stay true to who I was as an athlete, and I want to represent myself in a way that's true to me and not changing for anything. So I think as I evolved in the sport, I want to represent women. I want to represent, dancers. I want to represent people from all different backgrounds. So I don't think I ever really thought about living up to expectations of what someone else has done.
And so for this upcoming season, it's really kind of like right here upon us now. It's kind of crazy. I feel like the Olympia was so recent. And,
Yeah.
it's just kind of crazy how it snuck up on us. But what for you? What are you kind of looking forward to as far as like, we have these shows coming up. We also have like some things I want to improve on. So what are some of those things?
Yeah. So looking to showcase some of the improvements I've done in a short period of time from Olympia to Arnold. I would say just looking forward to getting on stage again, feeling the energy from the crowd, from being in that environment, and seeing what I can do in another season and another year under my belt, and see how much further I can climb.
It's like a common human push, a common human spirit to like continue to do better. And, getting all those people inside the same room, it's something special, I think. So it's really been
Definitely.
fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. There's something special about the energy behind these shows.
And how can you feel that too? Like being a performer, obviously you have experience with that, but how do you translate that and how do you utilize that when you are performing?
Well, I mean, being on stage my whole life, you feel the energy from the audience. I mean, that's something that when I'm working with other fitness competitors that I kind of try to teach them. I'm not sure that everyone feels that, but the second I get on stage, I feel the energy from people looking at me, and I don't want them to take their eyes off of me. So for me, that's the energy that I am getting, and I want to put out there. I want them to say, like, they can't take their eyes off of me. Like they feel my energy when I'm on stage, and that I love being up there, and that portrait that comes across the stage, and then they kind of like want to sit forward in their chair and get the energy that I'm giving off.
Yeah. I think there's something so unique to like performance, because even if like you never have danced before, if you've never acted before, you can actually like take something from like when somebody's doing it, and it can make you, it can give you, you know, literally feel like it gives you energy. It gives, like they're giving part of them, this aspect of them that like they're almost like saying, here's what I've done here. Like, tell me what you think.
Energy speaks volumes, I always say. So
It's been really cool getting to chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Definitely best of luck in this upcoming season, and, you know, just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.